Oh man, the Switch 2 sure looks amazing. They got open world Mario Kart, upgrades for Switch 1 games, a really neat looking tech demo, a wheelchair basketball game that looks really fun, Elden Ring, Final Fantasy VII Remake, Hogwarts Legacy, and a new From Software IP, all on the Switch 2. A new Hyrule Warriors set before Tears of the Kingdom, this game nobody saw, Tony Hawk, GameCube for Switch Online, Yakuza 0, both Deltarune and Silksong are real, Professor Layton still slated for 2025, a Kirby Air Ride sequel, a 3D Donkey Kong, and they got Nintendo Discord? The Switch 2 looks phenomenal! How could this possibly go wrong? So if you couldn't tell, this is quite a deal breaker for me. There's no reason any game should be this expensive. Credit where it's due, the system is a lot cheaper than I was expecting. Here in the UK, the Nintendo Switch 2 costs £395.99, or a bundle for £429.99 which includes Mario Kart World as a digital download. And this might seem a bit steep, especially if we compare it to the original Nintendo Switch, which launched for £300 back in 2017. But when we compare it to the current console market, this is actually a really great price. Both the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5 Slim cost £480, and the Steam Deck costs £350. But that has a 1280x800 screen size, just slightly larger than 720p compared to the Nintendo Switch 2's 1080p. The Steam Deck also doesn't come packed in with a dock. That costs an additional £70, pulling the price up to £420. So yes, the Switch 2 is indeed affordable compared to the current competition. But Nintendo, buddy, come on now, not even God of War Ragnarok was £75, and you're pushing the boat out just a little too far with Mario Kart World. You are the richest company in Japan, you don't need more money. Tears of the Kingdom was already £10 more expensive than the other Switch games, and now you're increasing the price again for Switch 2 games? If we take Tears of the Kingdom out of the equation, since it's the only Switch game sitting at £60, then the jump from Switch 1 to Switch 2 games is an entire £20, and in Mario Kart World's case, it is a £25 jump and a 50% increase. That is ludicrous! And it feels very manipulative, because everyone will see the price of Mario Kart World individually and then feel like they might as well get the bundle for only an extra £34. After all, you're saving £40, right? But then, if you can sell Mario Kart World as a digital download for £34, then why does it cost £67 alone digitally? It's nothing more than a simple psychology trick to make people get the bundle. So why do the games cost this much more? People are saying it's due to Donald Trump's tariffs, but then we should see every game as of now across different platforms jump 50% in price like Mario Kart World. So let's check other games. Indiana Jones and the Great Circle for PS5 is slated for £70 and has been for a while, and this has been the standard for AAA games since around 2020. If Switch 2's price increases for games was due to Donald Trump's tariffs, why hasn't Indiana Jones increased 50% up to £105? And of course, an easy answer to refute this point is that Bethesda is an American-based studio, so they won't be affected by the tariff like Japan is. So let's change our focus to a Japanese-based studio, Konami. Metal Gear Solid Delta is also slated for £70. So again, should this not be £105 now if we're taking in the percentage increase? The answer is simple. It isn't solely Donald Trump's tariffs. Yes, I'm sure that may have been a factor in it, but the main reason for this is simply corporate greed. They've seen other publishers stretch to higher releases, and they've slowly copied the formula, first with Tears of the Kingdom, and now fully embracing it with Switch 2. The price increases have hit because they've seen that games still sell well at this price. So what happens next? I mean, it's pretty easy to guess. Assuming Mario Kart World sells well, other publishers will increase their AAA prices to £75. And with GTA 6 being consistently rumoured to cost between £90 to £100, what will happen then? It's a never-ending cycle where game prices will increase as long as people continue to buy them. And I can hear the Nintendrones in the comments smashing away at their keyboards. If Sony can sell their games for £70, why can't Nintendo do it too? And that is a valid question, but there are a few points to consider here. Point number 1. They increased the prices with the Switch 2, which comes across as justifying it just because it's more advanced technology, nothing to do with the economy. Point number 2. Unlike Sony or Xbox games, Nintendo games very rarely get price cuts unless it's through Nintendo Selects. And we haven't seen Nintendo Selects even for year 1 Switch games like Breath of the Wild or Super Mario Odyssey. And Breath of the Wild costs $52.99 today. Even though games on PS5 from launch can still cost full price, they frequently get discounts from direct stores like Game UK. I found Sackboy on offer for £30 at 50% off. Not to mention that on the digital store you'll often see summer sales and winter sales which will give games around 30 to 40% off. This never happens on the eShop. The most you'll find is a 15% discount for a 5-year-old game. Mario Kart will remain at £75. Donkey Kong will remain at £67. The games aren't going to get cheaper like they do on other consoles. Point number 3, I don't like AAA games being £70 either. Whether it's Sony or Xbox or EA or Ubisoft or now Nintendo. I don't like £70 games. Of course, the best option for getting games cheaper will always be buying second-hand, but then if you exclusively buy second-hand games, there's zero money going towards the publisher. This is naturally a win for the consumer. The more people that buy second-hand copies, the less publishers earn and will then realise games aren't selling directly and then be forced to make price cuts. The most notable examples of this are the 3DS Ambassador program and the PS3 gutting every single useless feature they had in the original model which only served to inflate the cost to begin with. But this is also a double-edged sword, because if certain games don't sell well, then publishers might think a franchise simply isn't worth investing in, and then rely on the same IPs repeatedly, until they become stale and repetitive. And this is the risk Nintendo are going to face. Drag X Drive looks really cool, and representing people with disabilities is also really cool. But if this game is £70, it's going to flop just like ARMS did. Welcome Tour looked awesome for a free tech demo, but it's a paid game? It is a gamified digital manual. Sony are far greedier than Nintendo, but even they made Astro's Playroom a free download. Why is Welcome Tour a paid game? Did Nintendo learn nothing from 1-2 Switch? And yes, 1-2 Switch did sell 3.74 million copies, but how much of that is due to the fact that it was a launch title on the Switch when there was virtually no games for the system other than Breath of the Wild? The Nintendo Switch 2 doesn't have this problem. You could play GameCube games with Switch Online, you can play Mario Kart Tour, you can play your massive backlog of Switch 1 games that you still haven't bought, or games you have bought and just haven't gotten around to yet. You could play Yakuza 0 Director's Cut, you could play Cyberpunk 2077, or Deltarune, or anything else off this list. Welcome Tour is dead on arrival if it costs anything more than £10. Yes, it looks like a fun game. This isn't anything about the game's quality itself. It looks fun for an hour or two, but unlike 1-2 Switch, there are other options available when the system releases. There are so many options available that Welcome Tour will just get drowned out. But let's talk about Switch emulation and system hacking. If people aren't going to want to buy these games because of how expensive they are, they'll look to other methods. It took less than 4 weeks for the Switch to first get hacked by a team called Reswitched, and by July, full game dumps were being done by another team called Big Blue Box. By 2018, the Switch hacking scene had grown a lot, plus the Switch emulator called Yuzu released in January 2018. All this happening less than a year after the Switch launched in March 2017. If people can't afford the games for the Nintendo Switch 2, how fast will we see the hacking scene grow for the system? How long until we actually see an emulator release? People are being priced out of the hobby here, and they are going to look for alternatives. And I'm willing to bet we will see a very similar situation to the first Switch, where the hacking scene will pretty much be very active within its first year, and you will be able to have full game dumps and homebrew apps and everything else that comes with a modded console before the system is even a year old. There's also a lot of misconception about game key cards. Some games will have a cartridge that doesn't contain the full game data, and only acts as an activation key which then downloads the rest of the game. This is actually really good, and nobody is talking about it. No, the game key card isn't going to be every single game. If Donkey Kong Bonanza was a game key card, then why would Nintendo talk about the faster read speeds of the Switch 2 cartridges? Think about it. The game key cards are going to replace the terrible practice of one-time use digital codes in physical game packaging. In theory, one-time use codes won't exist anymore on the Switch 2. You can still sell the game, you can share it with friends and family. It simply makes a digital game into one that's partly physical. And I think that's really cool, but it could be used as a way to cheap out on releases, and I guarantee EA will use it as an excuse to lower their production costs. And it also raises concerns about game preservation. People also seem to think that PS5 and Xbox Series X games physically on disc are the same thing, where it's just an activation key of some kind. This is being debunked by the Twitter account Does It Play. I recommend you look into them a lot more. I'm not going to go over the entire account, but they are clearing up a lot of misconceptions about the current physical release situation. But on the whole, I do think the game keycard brings more positives than it does negatives. It isn't perfect, but it is a very good step. Overall, I think the Switch 2 is in a lot of trouble. If you have the money to buy it and buy the games, fair enough. I'm not saying you can't buy it or you shouldn't buy the games. What I am saying is, casual audiences aren't going to buy stuff for this system. They're going to be heavily priced out. And if your average family already owns a Switch, why bother getting a Switch 2? It runs the same risk the 3DS suffered at launch before the price cut, but this time it isn't the system's price which needs cutting, it's the software. Nintendo fans alone won't be enough to support the system and keep it alive. We saw this with the Wii U, and it isn't looking good for the Nintendo Switch 2. I know I sound quite pessimistic about this, so I do want to say that I think the system looks great, and the games revealed look phenomenal. The Switch 2 Direct was one of the best Directs I've watched in a long time. But in all honesty, I don't want it to succeed. I don't want these game prices to become the new norm. I want the hacking scene to grow immensely fast to show Nintendo that exploiting the consumer in this way is just not okay. Thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe. I know I might get a fair bit of hate for this, so please keep it respectful in the comments. If you are still excited, let me know why. What games are you looking forward to? Are you looking forward to the backwards compatibility? I, for one, am not, because if I can't play Everybody 1-2 Switch on the Switch 2 without needing these old crappy Joy-Cons that break if you cough on them the wrong way, then what even is the point?